Hi, and welcome to the video. My name is Lockie, I'm a Microsoft technical trainer, and it's great to be here with you. In this video, we're going to look at the audit and search capabilities within Purview, and specifically, we are going to be looking at Microsoft Purview Audit. Purview Audit is our primary mechanism to be able to go through and search and investigate user activity across our environment, which is good because it's designed to support this component of the information protection framework. For more information on the framework, head on over to learn.microsoft.com. Now we're going to start with a broad look at investigations within M365. Audit provides a key capability for not just those within the compliance space, but really everyone who needs to be able to go through and understand why a user did something. So we'll start with that as a mechanism to understand effectively what it is we're looking at. Now, incidents in Purview typically involve one of two questions. Either what happened, who did what, when, and how. This is user and admin actions. Maybe someone accessed or modified or shared something. Now, these also go through any other audit capabilities, but in fact, Microsoft Purview Audit also audits itself. It is the log that allows us to go through and see administrative changes on top of user changes, on top of content being copied from devices and locations. Effectively, this is our immutable log to understand what has been shared, altered, or moved in whatever way, shape, or form. Within this space, we do also support things like eDiscovery as a separate component. I'll talk about that in a moment. The other component is also what content was involved. Now, I mentioned that a couple of times, but it's important to note that we can filter the audit trail with this as the focus. It doesn't always have to be tied to the user. Instead, we can filter based on things like mailboxes, SharePoint sites, and give that ability to search based on that context for your particular requirements. And again, we have the ability to use eDiscovery as well to perform some of this work. So we should talk about where the difference lies between these two. Now, Purview Audit is designed as the primary mechanism to review user and admin actions. So think of this as the understanding component. This is an investigative tool and it works side by side with other components in the environment. You should use this as a way to look across SharePoint, Exchange, Teams, your various workloads where we need to understand where something has happened. But once we have distinguished that there is a particular problem we are trying to solve, something we are investigating or looking for a potential blast radius of other areas we need to investigate, that's where eDiscovery shines. It is designed to look for specific messages, documents, and chats across the M365 stack. Now, there is a few different versions of eDiscovery, standard and premium, and they offer slightly different feature sets. But at its core, its goal is to be able to collect, keep, and export data for investigative purposes. So let's focus on the audit capabilities for now. This is going to be the primary focus of this video, and we're going to look at it as how we use this as part of our investigative toolkit to be able to do the initial review stages and get ourselves set up. There's a number of things that I want to be able to look at within this component, and primarily it's understanding what the differences are between the different licensed components, how you can actually use audit to be able to pull in the right logs from the right locations, what it can do in terms of compliance and security event assessments, as well as a little bit of some of the irregular access pattern capabilities that are available within the premium version. Let's jump straight in. Now, audit standard versus audit premium. This is a key breakdown but does not cover every single feature. For a full list of all the feature differences, head on over to Microsoft Learn. But for now, let's focus on what is on the slide here. On the left, audit standard is our default. All organizations that choose to use the audit capabilities within Purview, this is essentially sufficient for basic user behavior tracking. Think sign-ins, file modifications, event sharing, this sort of space. It is perfect if you just need a basic compliance-based mechanism to track. But if you are looking to do any sort of forensic depth-based investigation using Purview, that is where we need to use the premium version. Things like the ability to look at mail read auditing. That is a capability that we don't have within the standard stack. For a real-world example, think someone in HR needing to confirm whether someone read a sensitive information message that was sent prior to it being leaked out into the world. Standard audit doesn't have that level of capability, but premium does. The difference is baseline auditing versus a forensic audit. Additionally, the audit premium does also increase your default ability to keep data with a longer retention period. So if you need to go 1 year or beyond for core services within the stack, you can use that as your mechanism to increase the length of time that data is kept. Now, Purview Audit itself does have a couple of other things you need to think about, and most of it comes down to licensing. M365 E3, E5, F1, F3, and many of the different Office 365 licensing suites all include the audit standard capability. But if you need the premium components, that is where you need either E5, E5 compliance, or a relevant add-on to get you those components in it. Basically, if you have an older environment or something that was very customized in the early days of Microsoft 365, you may need to confirm that you've got all of the right things set up. On top of that, there's also a number of different roles to support the audit capabilities. Audit Reader is designed for those who are going to be actually conducting audits, but Audit Manager, that is someone who's going to be affecting the settings related to the audit capabilities. Make sure that you're checking audit status early in an investigation. If you're going through and starting to gather information, you want to make sure that audit capability is on, so all of the trail is being followed as needed. On top of that, audit capability is actually used by a range of different other services within Purview to unlock additional features. So make sure you go through and enable it if you are thinking of utilizing it across the stack. I want to dive into a couple of areas around the differences between standard and premium, and also just cover a few other feature sets that are available within the audit stack. Now, standard is primarily designed for places where you need to do basic investigations. It's got a 50 kilobyte export limit, so think, is a user opening a file at a certain time, or is a user signed in at a particular location, or when was this document shared? We have a number of different filter options, but it's designed for focused queries. We want to be able to go through and understand if we are going to investigate a user, do we have the information we're looking for? But what it is not is a forensic analysis tool. This is a compliance audit log to be able to see, well, basic compliance components. Because we do have the ability to interface with PowerShell or the ability to export via API, there is a great number of integrations you can use this for. But ultimately, it is focused on those simple investigations. Where you require advanced investigation tooling, that is where we need the premium feature set. This is supposed to be for forensic grade investigations, where you need to go through and, maybe from a legal perspective, understand whether someone previewed an email or no. That is a component that is available within that premium stack. As an example, in the email access component, that ability to know if an individual bulk downloaded a specific set of components across a mailbox. That is something that we can achieve with the premium version of audit that otherwise, in standard, we may not be able to see directly. Now, there are some pausing capabilities within this. There's only 1,000 bind events a day that we can do, so there are some limitations here. But it still goes to a greater level of depth than we'll be able to get with the standard stack that's focused on just pure audit compliance. We do have the ability to go through and export the data. I'll show that on the next page for you. But just remember that there is a number of different things that kind of set in place. One thing that does get overlooked fairly often is a little bit of nuance between standard versus premium's capabilities when we see repeated actions. Now, standard, we may actually go through and emit logs where we see an event happening over and over again in the same spot. For a key example, a user opens the file twice, back to back, once in the browser and then once in the desktop. That would be an example of something that may get bundled together into a single audit line. Within the premium stack, every single interaction is saved, even if from a readability standpoint, anything like that, it doesn't really make sense. The focus is to have a critical, breach-ready inside a risk-ready forensic tool. Remember that these are different focuses. One is focused on just a pure audit trail to understand when certain things happened, and the other one is a forensic trail. Depending on what your particular standards state, you may need one or the other, but that is the important thing to remember, the difference in capability stack and intent. Now, if you do need to go through and export log data, it is as simple as hitting the export button. Go through and you can easily bring up a search query. For this, you use the KeyQL language to be able to define it, or Power Query, or you can just use the portal to create filters. I'll show this in a demonstration in a moment. But you can use this as a way to export up to 50,000 different events. It's a great way if you need to take this across to CSV in Excel, or out to an external third-party analysis tool, or if you're using an independent auditor that needs access to the data but we can't get them in the space. There are a couple of fields that will require flattening to make this work. So if we are using a JSON file, we can have nested pieces, but sometimes you need to go through and keep these flat. It is possible to transform some of these out into readable columns instead if you do use Power Query. So note that there is always a mechanism to make this happen. Head on over to the Microsoft Learn documentation for some examples on how you can actually achieve this within the audit capability there. Now, we talked about retention a little bit already, 180 days on the standard stack, but I want to look at premium here because it does have the ability to configure this retention in a bit of a more detailed sense. Essentially, the longer you retain the logs, you're able to work with slow developing incidents and regulatory inquiries for a bigger period of time. By default, standard's 180 days, but premium is 1 year out of the box and up to 10 years through the use of custom retention policies. Now, retention policies can be scoped in a range of different ways: user, activity type, workload. Essentially, we can use this as a way to target certain subsets of the business. Think of a scenario you might want to do this, such as finance. Well, we'll probably want to keep that for longer than our marketing team. Where you need to go through and understand for certain regulated industries, individual retention components, or meet certain requirements for the healthcare side of the business, but maybe not for the finance side, but maybe not for the HR side, we can essentially customize it. Because we do have that ability to customize down as well, we can also make it and so retention happens for a shorter period of time for certain parts of the business. This represents an interesting scenario where we only want to keep things for a short period for quick analysis, but maybe not for longer term. Again, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. You need to decide for your particular workloads and part of the business what is going to make the most sense. But you have the options. That's the critical thing. You can have up to 50 policies for specific users, record types, activities across the business. So you can have a wide range of different policies there. And note, whilst the default policy can't be changed directly, any policies you define are going to be higher priority. So we'll use those first. In this demo, I'm going to take you over across into the Purview portal, and I'm going to show you a little bit of some of the audit capabilities. I'll show you how to set up a search, how to do some exports. We'll talk about some of the different retention components around keeping data in certain locations for a longer period if we need to. To get ourselves started with the audit solution, we first need to go to the audit solution. Purview Audit actually is designed to capture not just activity from other Microsoft 365 solutions themselves. In fact, Purview Audit also contains the audit logs for Purview. It's designed, though, as an immutable location for you to be able to browse all of the different pieces of information you need to know about when someone did something in your environment. I've selected Audit here, and immediately we're brought up on a Search tab. The Search tab gives us all of the things we need to be able to find a piece of relevant activity in our environment. All we need to do is make sure it's enabled and that the data is being fed in. Note some of the different things that we can look for: the ability to search for different date ranges, activity types, users, object IDs, keywords. Effectively, every piece of filterable information you would likely want to be able to find when someone conducted an activity is all located here. Now I'm just going to select a date range of a few different days to be able to pull in some relevant pieces of information. And I'm going to go through and select activities primarily from some of the friendly names. Operation names can be quite complex if you don't know them ahead of time, but you can view the full list over on the Microsoft Learn documentation. When we open them up, though, in the friendly name, we can see very clearly things like the ability to access files, so when someone accessed something. Now, I'm going to go through and look at some of the data loss prevention policy enactions that we have available. So, searching for DLP, I have things like match DLP rule, remove DLP rule from document, but I'm interested in some of the administrative actions: created, updated, deleted, and also a little bit of created and updated around policies. This effectively means that we're not just looking at users, this is also for administrative components. So it's the same interface either way. Once I do have the pieces in place, I will need to go through and give the search a name. This allows us to come back to it later and learn where things are actually located. Additionally, in the audit log, this will now give us a search that we use for this. We'll search for our DLP policy activity. You may wish to give a more comprehensive name or come up with a naming convention for your searches here, but make sure it's meaningful. Since they are retrievable later and can be used in investigations, this is a really easy thing to get right. Now, the search will take a little bit of time, so I'll see you back here in a moment once it's completed through. If you want to see the status of a search, you can see down the bottom a little piece has popped up, and we'll take a look at that in a tick. Now, I'm just refreshing my page here to be able to see all of the searches that have come through. I've got a reduced time frame one that was cancelled, so we can see different cancelled and paused jobs here. But I've got my query information up and my search starting to come through here. Immediately, we are presented with a list. Every action that Joni has taken in the environment over the period that I specified. This is all we need to be able to do to go through and do what we need. So feel free to use this as a way to find these relevant pieces of information around activity in an environment. Once you're ready to export, simply select the results that you're interested in exporting, hit the export button there, and you'll be able to generate that CSV file to be able to go and pull the data where you need. We can open up any of these individual pieces though, and we can view further information. So if you're looking to dive deeper, feel free to just open any of them up, get a view of the metadata, and you'll be able to get an idea of what's present. Now that we've performed our search, I want to go through and also take a look at some of the retention policies around this. Since we are already in the audit tab, we should go take a look at some of the different capabilities that are there in terms of making sure that data is kept for the period of time you need to meet your regulatory or internal requirements. For this, we'll head back into our solutions, open up our audit tab there. Then we'll open up the side flyout. I want to go in here and I want to just quickly jump into our policies section. This is where we determine how long audit information is kept for different types of information. So if we need to go beyond the default and we have premium enabled, we can essentially dictate it here. I'm going to go through and select a few different components, but DLP is the thing that I'm interested in. So I want to ensure that it's targeting all of the right places. Whilst Exchange and SharePoint are certainly going to be the big ones, there are a couple of other things that will be relevant. Note the ability to filter by users or by record types. These are optional individual pieces of filtering you can put in place. The record types are what I'm interested in though. I'm interested in the compliance components around DLP, specifically endpoint and Exchange as the primary ones. Now, should probably go remove that SharePoint from the title, but we can edit these later if we need to. Regardless, we will go through and at least set our durations correctly. So we'll set up our built-in durations here, set how long you need. Shorter period, longer period, you can define it here. This gives you up to 10 years of information retention as you need it. And note that priority number down the bottom. This gives you an ability to set a checklist. So if you have 10 different policies with potential interactions, maybe a generic policy that captures the whole environment, but a specific one that's targeting a subset of high-profile users, higher priority wins. Put that at the top and it will ensure that if there is a more specific or longer retention required, we can put that in place. Using these sorts of retention policies, we can meet our regulatory, legal, or investigative requirements and ensure that the audit log is populated for the period that we actually need to be able to do the work that we need. In this video, we looked at the Microsoft Purview Audit capabilities and how they function in your environment. Thank you for joining in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.